Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Sunday as we take a look at the strong tropical wave that is now moving into the western Caribbean. This is the 80-degree west longitude line. Here's 20 degrees north, here's 15. And it looks as if the wave is going to wind up passing north of Honduras and heading perhaps in toward Belize or the southern part of the Yucatan Peninsula. And if we look at the satellite this afternoon, it seems to me that there is some sort of low-level circulation trying to develop here right around this area. It certainly looks like the clouds are turning in that in a counterclockwise fashion to indicate that maybe there is a weak low that is now developed. And weather models are pretty bullish with this system, actually strengthening it to a tropical storm in the next 24 hours before it makes landfall and then crosses the Yucatan Peninsula. Conditions are conducive aloft for development. We don't have any wind shear issues to speak of. The water here is very, very warm. Everything would say that this system will become the season's sixth tropical storm. Franklin, everybody, including myself, thought it would be the wave off the African coast from a couple of days ago, but that is continuing to turn out to be a non-event, poorly organized. You can see it here. It's elongated from the southwest to the northeast. It's all stretched out, and we don't have any kind of real concentrated area of thunderstorms. Look at the difference between the structure of the system in the Caribbean versus the structure of the wave out in the Atlantic, and you can see how much more well developed this system is as opposed to this one. And there are issues going on in the Atlantic Ocean, which is going to be problematic for this wave to develop. And you know, we've been saying once again, it's the appearance of a strong upper air low sitting in the right along 25 degrees north, actually, and that's creating a strong west-southwest winds aloft from the Lesser Antilles northeastward. This was not the case just a few days ago. This upper low, we had one that pulled out. Then we had a couple of days where not much was happening, and now we have it again. We also have, by the way, you can see these areas of dry air, and that is also problematic. The environment surrounding the tropical wave in the Caribbean is a much better one. And if you look at the loop, it doesn't really have any wind shear to deal with, and the amount of dry air into its northwest, north, and northeast is very limited. So it's kind of sitting in its own deep tropical moisture flow. So I really don't see anything that's going to stop this from developing into a tropical storm. Here are the forecast tracks from the hurricane models with what we call the spaghetti plots, and now all of them take it across into the northwest, and actually all of them also take it in north of Belize into the Yucatan Peninsula, and then cross it over into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, and gives it pretty long water exposure here when it gets into the southwest Gulf. So this thing, I think, has a shot of becoming a hurricane eventually before it makes landfall. And the upper air track would suggest that the track would be mostly west-northwest to westerly, and not one where it turns northerly. And we'll look at the conditions aloft in a second. I'm going to start with the European model this afternoon because it picks this out very well. The colored lines here, if you just imagine that there's, if I can sort of draw them in. I mean, this is really the same as upper air maps with the jet stream, but it overlays it on this one in color. And the upper air winds are primarily going to be pushing this toward the west. And here we have the jet stream here with upper air winds going from west to east. So right in this area here is a big upper high, okay, and that extends out into the Atlantic. So this is all underneath this big ridge of high pressure. We don't have any kind of trough down through Texas and into Mexico to pull this up to the north. So that's why I don't think this is going to be any kind of threat. So here it is. By Monday morning, it has a little wrapped up surface low there. So at this point, I would suspect that this could very well be at least a tropical depression or a tropical storm, which it moves over the Yucatan Peninsula, and then once it's back into the Gulf of Mexico on Wednesday, it really drops that pressure down into the 980s. So this could argue for a Category 1 hurricane before it moves inland into Mexico. I think that's probably a good bet now. The Europeans have been very consistent with this for many days, and I don't see why we should go against it. And given its performance in the last week or and a half with these tropical waves that have been out there, it's far more, it's done much better than the GFS or the Canadian. And by the way, the European, which last night tried to make something out of the system in the Atlantic when it goes north of the Bahamas, is far less bullish with it today. It's probably represented by this kink here in the isobar. There's probably some kind of a low, and that represents the wave that's out in the tropical Atlantic now. And this particular run of the European didn't do anything with that. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to not pay too much attention to the one in the Atlantic until unless it shows signs of organizing. And given that upper air that we saw, I mean, given that it's going to have to deal with this environment and these strong southwesterly winds aloft, I would tend to think that this will eventually just get ripped apart by the time it gets to that longitude when it gets further west. Okay, so let's look at what's going on for our weather, and we have clouds already streaming in. They actually came in a lot faster than I thought. We have low pressure that's coming out of the middle Mississippi Valley that's going to set us up for some rain here in the Northeast. And in fact, this low is on the stalled frontal boundary that went through yesterday. That front is stalled out, and this low is going to track probably to the east or east-northeast across northern Virginia and then move off the southern New Jersey coast Monday night. That's going to mean for rain north and west of the low center, and temperatures probably in the 60s to around 70, and maybe a little bit of a severe weather threat from southern New Jersey down into eastern Virginia, northeastern North Carolina, because they will be in the warm sector with this. And you can see the clouds are pushing eastward. You've got this upper air system sitting up in eastern Canada, kind of driving everything. That trough in the east, ridge in the west scenario is getting these weather systems coming through with more frequency. And meanwhile, in the west, no extreme heat going on. By the way, this swirl is the remnants, the low-level swirl remnants of Tropical Storm Irwin. And that's made its way all the way up into Oregon. I mean, all that's left with it really are just some low and middle clouds, and maybe a couple of spot showers, and that's just about it. Otherwise, we have the typical summer day here. Going to watch to see if the monsoonal thunderstorms develop in the southwest and in the southern Rockies. I think that's a possibility. Other than that, the weather in the west remains relatively tranquil. So let's explore the GFS for the next several days. And by the way, I have said this a couple of times. So with respect to the GFS, the reason why we use it a lot in the practical day-to-day matters with the show precip and everything else is because those maps are not available publicly via the European. And by the way, good time here to give a big thank you to Levi Cowan of tropicaltidbits.com. I use his maps, and he's very kind and generous, and his work is terrific. And I appreciate that he allows sharing, and I'm more than happy to give him all the credit he deserves for all of this. So if you haven't checked out any of his website, if you haven't checked out his website, you really should at tropicaltidbits.com. And every model, almost every model is available on there, and along with all different levels of the atmosphere, hurricane models, and so on. Okay, so here's the low. We've got rain coming in for Monday morning, and actually some of that rain is going to move into the early morning hours across north central Maryland, south central with southeastern Pennsylvania, and southern New Jersey. I don't know how much of that rain on the leading edge reaches the ground, but then we get into a good shot of rain during the afternoon and evening, and low pressure in northern Delaware. So there's going to be a bit of a warm sector here somewhere. Somewhere down in here is going to be a bit of a warm sector. So that's where I would suspect you might get some thunderstorms. So, and to the north of it, the flow is going to be onshore. So temperatures will be in the autumn-like 60s probably. And it does give a decent shot of widespread rain of 1 inch to 1.5 inches throughout most of the area. Then that low moves out. Nice little high builds in with some cooler temperatures for the rest of the week, or at least through Thursday. And then we start to deal with the next weather system come into the plains and Midwest. Maybe another chance for another onshore flow type of day at the end of the week, Friday into Saturday. Here is the remnant area of the tropical wave out in the Atlantic. And going into next weekend, showing some chances for showers and thunderstorms. And at that point, we are actually at the middle part of the month of August, which is hard to believe. Another cool air mass follows that. And then, toward the end of the period, it does want to at least try to make for some ridging off the east coast of the United States. Now, we've been down this road before with the GFS, and I, again, caution that the ridge in the east, the ridge in the west, trough in the east scenario, to me, that pattern remains unchanged until proven otherwise. So, by the end of the period, if you look here, this is, now we're almost to August 22nd here. We've got a trough, deep trough, very deep trough in the west, and a fairly, not a huge ridge, but the ridge is in the eastern part of the United States. That's a change. That's a change from the pattern that we've been in pretty much straight through for the last couple of months. But again, the model has been doing this on and off for the last few weeks, and we've yet to see that pattern materialize. In the meantime, if this holds, you're going to continue to see any tropical waves move along with a large westward component of motion. So anything that's out there in the tropical Atlantic is going to try to find its way into the Caribbean, or if it's a little further north, it'll probably eventually try to find its way into the Gulf of Mexico. Long-term speculation there on my part. And when we just back it up here, going to today, you can see here's the next trough swinging around for Monday into Tuesday. You have that troughing in the east. Here's the reflection of the whatever tropical storm that develops in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, in the Caribbean or southwestern Gulf of Mexico. The next trough swings around for early next week, the week of August 14th, and then that moves on through, and it's only toward the very end of the long-range period, days 14, 15, and 16, that you start to see this ridge pop up. And by the way, if it does pop up, it may just be, again, one of those circumstances like we saw in May and in June and in July, where it pops up for a stretch of 2 or 3 days, and then it breaks down, and we go back to the original pattern that we started out with. So I'm going to tend to just continue to go along with the way the weather trends have been with respect to the pattern over the last couple of months until proven otherwise. I am okay. You should be able to hear me. If you guys can just let me know if you can hear me, that'd be great. It's just a little bit of a few second lag going on. Great. Now, all right, give me 1 second because my dog is trapped in the back and I got to untrap him. Hang on. Okay, I should still be here. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. My dog can't see, and he got himself caught underneath a chair, so I had to go take care of that. Raymond, I'm doing fine. And I hope everybody is doing well too. Let me just update you on what's going on with the tropical system in the Caribbean, because that is actually, the Hurricane Center is now putting out potential tropical cyclone statements. It started that at 5 o'clock, and they ran another one now just a few minutes ago. It's at 16.1 north, 82.7 west. And that's about 85 miles north-northeast of Cabo Gracias in Adios on the Nicaraguan-Honduras border, or about 405 miles east-southeast of Chetumal, Mexico. Top winds 35 miles an hour, moving west-northwest at 12. And when we look at the, I'm just looking at the latest loop, and, it continues to organize, but there's a little bit of westerly shear going on, shear on the west side, and that's because of a little upper low that's sitting there. But that upper low is forecast to dissipate overnight, and that will put this system under an upper high, which is going to be very favorable for development. So I'm expecting this to become a tropical storm overnight or during the day on Monday and head into the Yucatan Peninsula. All the model guidance now takes this north of Central America, Honduras and Nicaragua, and then moving it over into the Yucatan and eventually into the Bay of Campeche. And when it gets in there, it might have room, especially if it comes out at about 21 or 22 degrees north or a little bit north of there. It'll have room and time to strengthen. So I wouldn't be surprised if this winds up becoming a hurricane before it makes landfall on the other side. And a lot of the models are bringing it up close to hurricane strength, or certainly as a strong tropical storm. Now, with respect to the rain that's coming for tomorrow, where that warm sector sets up is going to be important with respect to where the severe weather is going to occur on Monday. And I think, the Storm Prediction Center on their latest forecast for Monday has slight risk touching southern New Jersey, with marginal risk pushed up a little further north now to about just north of Route 195. And that covers most of extreme southeastern Pennsylvania, a little portion of south central Pennsylvania into north central Maryland, back into Virginia, and through North Carolina. North of there, there'll be some general thunderstorm activity, but it's going to be related more to the warm front than anything else. And I think that you're probably going to not see severe weather from New York City northward. But it's kind of cutting it close in terms of where that warm front is going to be setting up. Do I think who should see rain first before the Capital District? I think I'm going to see rain down here, down in southeastern New York, before you do, the way it's setting up. And Okie AG, where he needs a lot of rain over where he is in Oklahoma. I'll take a closer look at the weather pattern to see what's going on in the southern plains. I haven't really paid too much attention to it lately, but I'll give it a look. In fact, I can probably give it a quick look right now while we speak. Let's see. And hang on, bear with me, everybody. Yeah, it does, toward the end, Wednesday night, Thursday, and then maybe again Friday night into Saturday, and then again later Saturday into Sunday, you have some risks for some showers and thunderstorms coming your way. So you may have some chances as the week goes on. So we'll see what happens. Let's see. Sorry, let me just scroll back on the chat here. If the U.S. East troughs stay, mean upper 60s for Boston and northern Canada, mid 70s. Well, yeah, if the trough stays in the east, it's going to be cooler than average in the east, and that at least is the case out through 10 days. I really am suspect with this ridge in the east showing up. It might, and if it does maybe it does pop up like the other ones have in the prior months, where they pop up for 2 or 3 days. It pops up for 2 or 3 days, and then gone. Delvin, you know what? I didn't get a chance to find the graphic. I will try to find it. It's somewhere buried in my Facebook page, and I just gotta remember where it is. But I will find it. Can I show the severe weather outlook for tomorrow? All right. Well, give me a second here. Let me see if I can do this. I might not be able to do this right now, but let me just. All right, hang on. I'm going to pull the map up. Okay. This is just going to take me a second, folks, so I'll show you the severe weather outlook. And it's not going to be the neatest transition in the world, but we'll do the best we can. And let's see. Okay, I think I got it. Okay, so here's your severe weather outlook for tomorrow, and you can see it here. That slight risk touches Cape May across most of Delaware, and then extends south and west into Virginia and northern North Carolina, and you can see where the marginal risk is. And, you know, the surface low track is probably going to be somewhere between where the slight risk line and the marginal risk line is, and that would take it off the New Jersey coast. So the area just north and west of there could get a pretty decent amount of rain out of this. Why don't we, while we're being creative, I can pull the GFS, and we'll see what the total rainfall is on the GFS model through 72 hours anyway, and we'll get a little close. Okay. And now let's see. This just takes me a second. Okay, so here's your GFS rainfall for Monday into Monday night, and you can see that this is where your warm sector probably is. Okay, there's kind of a hole in the precip because it gives less than a half an inch, pretty much from where the marginal risk of severe weather starts, and then where you have the slight risk is where you have these 1 to 2 inch amounts, and then north and west of the low track, you have some 1 to 2 inch plus amounts from northeastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, most of Connecticut, and on up into Massachusetts. So that's what that is what the model is showing us with respect to rainfall here, and it could wind up being heavier than that. And in which case, it's not going to take very much to produce some flash flooding issues, because there has been, in a number of areas in this last week, got quite a bit of rain. So I wouldn't be surprised if there winds up being some flash flood issues developing there. Okay. Delvin from the Creator Studio, click live streaming, then click events, click new live event, complete the basic tab. Okay, thanks for telling me that. I'm going to go figure that out. Maybe for the next live video, I can have that all ready to go. I saw that one, the short range models was showing 6-inch plus plays for parts of coastal New Jersey. I'm sorry, but can you tell me, Ethan, which short range model was doing that? I'll pull, let me just take a look. It's probably one of the more ridiculous, one of the NAM models. I don't see any here. I'm looking at the short range. Oh, I see. Okay, the WRF model. Yeah, it's got some 6-inch plus rains. I'll tell you something. With respect to, the models, each different, every model at some point in the last couple of weeks has shown some sort of extreme rain event, and for somebody, and none of them really happened. Okay, the one that did happen this week, with 2 to 4 and even some 5-inch rainfall amounts in parts of northern New Jersey and the Hudson Valley and Connecticut, none of the models did well with that. But you know what? I'm thinking it will be a 1 to 2 inch rainfall for most people, and could there be some locally higher amounts with some of these thunderstorms? Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised. So it was the WRF model, which is one that I usually don't look at very often. I think, it's probably overdone. It's very hard to forecast extreme rain events. It's rare that you get, all models converging, and that's why sometimes when they happen for some places, they can be a bit of a surprise. It seems like the GFS has become like the European last winter. It kept popping up storms and it ended up never happening. Well, that's the same thing what it does what it's been doing with these tropical systems and the tropical wave that's out in the Atlantic right now. I don't hold out much for that one to develop at this point. So overall, once we get through this rain event early this week, at least for my portion of the Northeast, Tuesday, Wednesday, and maybe Thursday look okay, and then we may have another similar setup going into Friday and the weekend. We seem to want to have these cool highs pass by to the north. The onshore flow develops. You get a little wave on these stalled fronts that move along, and you get into some rain with that, and then that moves out. You saw in the long range another one follows. Now, to address the tropics, by the way, we still have this big problem with this big upper low that's sitting out in the upper atmosphere in the southern Atlantic, and that it went away. Then a new one formed, and now we've got this wind shear environment going on again. These strong winds across much of the tropical Atlantic. The wave that's out there would have to get west of 65 west to get out of the way of that shear. So it'll be a question of whether it survives that. The European kind of tried to develop it north of the Bahamas late in the period from the overnight run, but the day run had nothing. So, with these tropical systems, sometimes it's hard. It's really hard to rely on the global models because they're all going to do their little, they're all going to have their little quirks and spin certain things up. The European has been more consistent with this. So that's why I'm kind of leaning toward its idea that maybe nothing comes out of it. Now, if the pattern winds up changing mid-month, maybe it will change where the upper low of the Atlantic will pull up far enough north again, and we can cut down on the amount of Saharan dust that is going through. John Balance, weak La Nina on the way or too early to tell? I really, I haven't really paid too much attention to it. I don't think that either a weak, I think the probability was for a weak El Nino and not a La Nina. But I really haven't read up too much lately about what's going on as far as the Nino Nina thing is concerned. But right now we've been kind of sort of in this neutral zone. And I'm thinking, it's going to stay that way. So the tropics should behave like they normally do, and they seem to be in terms of how the activity is picking up. The Pacific is shutting down at the moment, which is usually when the Atlantic picks up. We'll see how long that pattern holds. Dio, any severe storms this week in New York City? No, I think for tomorrow, severe weather. When we say severe weather, we're talking about severe thunderstorms. Will be to the south of New York City and probably maybe southern New Jersey southward, I think, as the biggest risk. And once this system goes through Monday night, we will see nothing, I think, in terms of thunderstorms for maybe through certainly, I think, through Thursday and possibly into early Friday before the next weather system rears its head late in the week or into the weekend. We're at August 6th now, so the average temperatures are starting to have peaked for the summer season, and they're going to start to drop. So again, I point out the fact that if this troughing stays in the east, we're going to start to see more robust, cooler air masses coming down over time. Delvin, what my experience with Sandy, and what was your opinion about it? Well, my view on Hurricane Sandy, and I've said this many times in my library lectures, and if you're on Long Island, by the way, I have another one tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at the Connecticut Library in Islip. So do come out if you can. We will certainly talk about the current hurricane season, and we can also discuss things about past storms. Sandy to me was a generational event. What I mean by generational events is that they basically happen every 20 or 25 years, where you get this sort of mega storm scenario and setup. The setup for Sandy was such that I've never seen with regards to a tropical system. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened before. It's just that I've never seen it. And it was kind of a perfect setup with what was going on aloft, a big, deep, upper low, strong jet lifting it up north and then turning it northwestward. That's just, especially when you see something like that in the latter part of October. Very unusual, of course. But for my area, certainly Sandy is the storm that everybody's going to go to every time a tropical system comes up. And just like in New Orleans, it's Katrina. In Florida, in Miami, it's Hurricane Andrew. In the Mississippi Gulf Coast, it's Hurricane Camille. So people are going to measure immediately, go reflexively to the fact that everything is going to be the next whatever it is, Sandy, for us. There's good and bad in that, because when you react, you're going to react on the side of caution, which is a good thing. But some people are going to react on the side of caution, and if they, I'll put it this way, if they don't get the tragedy that they're looking for, they're going to be upset. I never quite understood that reaction, but some people actually do get upset when you're predicting, when you're having a tough time trying to predict tropical storms and hurricanes as it is, and you know what the risks are, and if their particular area doesn't get the strong winds and tidal flooding, they somehow think that is a bad thing that they didn't get it. I don't quite understand that reaction. I kind of get where the anger comes from in a way, but even there, it's it's weather. It's very fluid. If you can't understand that, if you don't have an understanding of the fact that meteorology is a fluid science, it's forecasting change, and it's forecasting the change of pretty much every molecule in the atmosphere. If you can't grasp that, then you really shouldn't even be on weather pages or on on this YouTube channel. Well, I want you on my YouTube channel, of course, but you got to understand that there is going to be a certain amount of fluidness, and some forecasts are not going to work out the way originally put out, and you have to go with the flow. And if something bad is forecast to happen and something causes it to prevent that from happening, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Okay. Hello to Alex 1. Yes, Alex, some heavy rain is possible. I think from northeastern Pennsylvania across northern New Jersey to southern New England and the Hudson Valley to southeast New York, there could be a good solid 1 to 2 inch rainfall. And then there's the threat for some thunderstorms from central South Jersey southward, and then some of those thunderstorms could also produce some heavy rain. So flash flooding is a possibility. The ground's pretty saturated in a lot of spots, so that it wouldn't take much in the way of rainfall to cause some flooding. Yes, John Balance, prepare and hope for less. That's really what you do. Be ready for it. And if it winds up that you get away with it unscathed, that's a good thing. And by the way, people are also going to measure their experiences based on prior hurricanes. There were people that survived Hurricane Katrina that wound up dying in hurricanes that followed in Louisiana, and this is because their reaction was, well, I survived Katrina, therefore I'm going to survive anything else. Well, not everything hits the same way. And there were people that used that logic and tragically lost their lives. And, Sandy's going to do the same thing when the next one comes. There are people who went through Sandy and came away relatively unscathed, or perhaps with just some minor inconveniences and problems, and they're going to make a decision based on that experience, when the next system may be totally different. There's a huge difference when you get a hurricane coming in in central New Jersey versus one that comes into New York Harbor versus one that comes in over central Long Island. The storm surges are completely different for all of them, and you can't make a decision on what's coming up, what would come up now, based on what your decision was in a prior storm. So let's leave it here at that. I really enjoyed our chat tonight, and weekend nights are easier for me because I'm here and I'm not working on my regular job, which is on FiOS 1 News. For those of you who have FiOS, you can see me on FiOS 1 News Long Island and FiOS 1 News New Jersey. And every once in a while, I show up also on FiOS 1 News Hudson Valley, and also occasionally on WPIX TV in New York. So if you're in this area or online, you can tune in and watch. I will be back on Tuesday. So we will do another live chat here tomorrow night after my library talk is done. So I'm thinking maybe after 9 o'clock or 9:30 and in the evening. Delvin, I don't know if I'll be able to do an early live stream. I may have to do it later because I do have a library lecture tomorrow at 7 o'clock. For those of you on Long Island, that's at the Connecticut Library in Islip at 7 p.m. So I will do I may do a live stream afterward. Of course, I may also do one tomorrow morning, depending on what weather conditions are going on. So just have your notifications, your notifications for this YouTube channel turned on, and when it goes live, you get notified and you can jump on board. And I will have time for a live chat. And you know what? Somewhere along the way, we can also do just a straight chat. Maybe once I figure out how to, when Delvin giving me those the information, thank you, to how to, I'll be able to pull the maps up with relative ease. We can, I'll do kind of a mix. So that'll be great. Okay, so we'll see you tomorrow. And thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it that you are enjoying my YouTube channel. And I'm really having a blast. And we get these weather situations. If we get into some serious weather along the way, we will be broadcasting here, and we'll be more than happy to give you whatever information you need. And we'll have live chats as well along the way. All right, folks, have a great evening, and we will see you tomorrow.